Hello. Welcome or welcome back to my channel. So this is catch up wrap up number 3. As of today, I have I have 20 books, more than 20 books actually, that I've not talked about. So we're gonna pace ourselves, or rather I'm going to pace myself with this with these book talks. So if you find anything that you are interested in, feel free to check out, and we can have some kind of conversation about the books. But anyway, yeah, today in this video I have 3 books that I read a few months ago. I think this was in June or July. And all of the 3 books that I want to talk about in this video are translated fiction. Yes, my favorite kind of books. So I am going to start with this first one. This is by Irmgard Keun. This is called After Midnight. This book was originally written in German. It was translated to English by Anthea. It was originally published in 1937, the German version. So this is the first book by Irmgard Keun that I've read, and I must say I really enjoyed it. I've been interested in reading stuff by Irmgard Keun for a while now, but I've been struggling to find it. And then one day I just saw this book at the bookstore, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna get it. It's short. I think, it's probably gonna be a good investment, and it was. So in After Midnight, we follow a young woman, 19-year-old woman named Zanna, and she lives in Frankfurt. And basically, the time that this book was set in was the time when Hitler just rose to power. So the midnight that is mentioned here basically just kind of refers to the midnight, like the moment after which Hitler was in charge. And there are a few things that I like about this book. So basically, we follow the story of Zanna, this young woman who lives in Frankfurt, and she is, at first, the impression that we, readers could have of this character is that she's kind of apolitical, and she doesn't really care so much about, who's ruling the government, what's going on in her life politically. Her concerns in her own life is just kind of things that, kind of stereotypically frivolous. She just cares about living her life in the city away from her aunt that she doesn't like. She cares about, having fun with her friends, her girlfriends, and also she is also in love with her cousin, and she would love to pursue a romantic relationship with her cousin. So when we are introduced to Zanna, she's not exactly, I would say, a character that you could expect to be a protagonist in a political novel. Now, this is a very short novel, but very political, and I like how it approaches the critique on a society that is on the verge of embracing authoritarianism, and you can even say that by the time that the story begins in this novel, that society has already embraced authoritarianism to some extent, because obviously that's how someone like Hitler was able to gain power signaled by, the midnight in this book, the time which he basically became the one in charge. Now back to Zana. She does not express much in terms of in terms of political aptitude. She doesn't really care about those things. But as the story goes on, what we're seeing as readers is that we see how this novel, through the eyes of Zana, kind of show how society becomes more and more absurd and weird in its kind of like perverted way. Like how the society is beginning to accept certain things that if you were to just judge it by common sense, it wouldn't be acceptable. Certain things that are related to prejudice, that are related to bigotry, that are related to how one is expected to treat other people. And it seems that, as we look at the events unfolding in the story, like how the society is sort of starting to show its true colors at the time, through the eyes of this supposedly apolitical young woman. We're starting to see that even without really technical or really deep knowledge of politics and all that, you can still identify that certain things are just questionable and wrong. And this is sort of like the kind of character arc that Zana is experiencing in this book. Like, she starts out not caring so much about politics and her society and all that. She just cares mostly about, her own life. But she begins to see like how people around her are acting in this increasingly absurd ways that are becoming more and more questionable to her, and she starts to question what is really going on around her. Like she begins to question the reality that is happening around her, and she still does, and basically she does this mostly through her own perceptiveness and through common ideas of decency and also common sense. And I think this is why I really enjoy this book. It doesn't really use a character sort of like political fervor to highlight certain ideas about societies and politics and governance, but rather it uses something that is like completely opposite. Something that is more closer towards apathy and an apolitical mindset of its character to show that even without, even with just armed with just common sense, one can see that certain things are wrong. When certain things are wrong, it is wrong. When they're not, when certain things harm people, that's what it does, and it is wrong, right? So this was a really nice book, and I really enjoyed it. I also really like the tone in which how this book is written. There is something that it feels very consistent from the beginning to the end. Like how conversational it all feels. Like we can sort of imagine ourselves as readers as we sort of accompany Zana, the main character, throughout this novel, in her personal character development, and we don't really feel like it becomes heavy. And I just kind of want to add that the moment when this book sort of becomes heavy is when Zana actually encounters certain other characters who expresses really strong political ideas about, wherever they stand. Right? She encounters several characters in this book with strong political ideas, and these characters begin really talking about their politics in this really philosophical way that, in contrast with other parts of this novel where it's only just Zana in her life and all that, which is much lighter, that part sort of becomes heavier, and you could sort of feel that Zana herself, it's kind of becoming somewhat overwhelming for her. It's kind of like, in a way, you could sort of imagine that this book is Zana's crash course in things that are heavy to her, such as politics, philosophy, and all that. And you can sort of feel that as well when you read this book, and I think that adds even further layer into this sort of this mild absurdity that you can detect from this novel, where you get a bunch of other side characters who has different opinions about different things, but many of them just sort of talk about it, but they don't really do much, either because they don't really want to do much, or because they don't really have the ability to do so, or for so many reasons. But basically you have so many other characters just kind of like talk over Zana, the main character, and Zana is just kind of like, she's just there. She's probably hearing some things, but she might not be able to understand like all of it 100%, but at the same time she might be able to get those ideas, because as a character she is very, I would say, very perceptive. That is kind of like the main thing about her, in my opinion. So After Midnight is a wonderful novel, and in fact I just bought, well, not just, but I bought like a few months ago another novel by Irmgard Keun. I think it's called The Artificial Silk Girl, and I'm interested to read that one sometime in the future. It's also kind of short novel, and if you have read any other stuff by Keun, let me know if you have any recommendations. So moving on. Oh, before that, let me just say that the quality of this video is probably going to be grainy, and I noticed that sometimes the color itself can just sort of shift, into this kind of like yellow tint or whatever. I think it's something related to my camera and the fact that I'm filming in somewhere dim. My room is kind of dim right now, and the light isn't working. and I'm not using my desk lamp right now, but regardless, I don't think the video is that important, because what are you going to look at on this video anyway? It's just me. Anyway, the next book I want to talk about is this book by Jun'ichirō Tanizaki. Okay, it's called The Key. Okay, I get it why sometimes the video can be important. Okay, this is The Key by Jun'ichirō Tanizaki. Okay, I'm gonna switch off the light now. Okay. So this book was originally written in Japanese. It was translated to English by Howard Hibbett. And I think this was published sometime in I couldn't really find the year of the original Japanese version, but I think it was published sometime in the middle of the 20th century. And the story is also set around that time. So this is my first by Jun'ichirō Tanizaki, and it's a short novel, pretty big font. And in this book, we follow a married couple, a man and a woman. I think the man is, he's a middle-aged man, and his wife, his wife is younger than him by like about 10 years or so. And the structure of this novel follows the, basically, just kind of like arranged such that we're seeing the journal entries of this husband and this wife arranged in an alternate manner. So the first thing that we're seeing here, like the first part, is the journal entry of this husband, and then after that it is followed by the journal entry of the wife, and so on and so forth, up until somewhere towards the end where things get a little bit messier, but that's also because of plot reasons. All right. So wherever we are at the at the husband's chapter, or the husband's chunk of the text, it is going to be marked by a single dot here. I'm not exactly sure if that is the standard in like Japanese literature or anywhere, whereas the wife's chapter, it is marked by this 2 dots. So basically what's going on with these journal entries, the husband and the wife basically are like talking about each other, sort of. So the husband talks about how his wife is just kind of like his wife is kind of sexual in a way, but at the same time the husband also has some kind of sexual request from his wife that he would love his wife to fulfill him with. But at the same time the wife is kind of hesitant about fulfilling this sexual needs of or rather sexual request of her husband. And when we get to the journal entries of the wife, we're also seeing this wife talking about her husband. And basically what's going on is that they sort of talk about similar things, like how this husband asked her about all these things related to their his sexual request. Basically. But as we read on, we also find out more about how are things going on in their marriage as usual. So they have a daughter who is like adult age daughter, and we also learn more about how their marriage happened. So basically it was something that wasn't really born out of love. So the marriage was just something that was just kind of practical for them. And so this wife character especially, whom I find kind of interesting in this book, we sort of learned that she's not particularly super happy in this marriage. Like, it is something practical to her, yes, but at the same time it is not, this marriage to her doesn't represent the utmost happiness for her, not in terms of relationship nor in terms of sex. So we kind of learn more about their marriage through their journal entries. Now, something really interesting about these journal entries, or should I say diary entries, is that as readers, we are seeing these entries, most of them arranged in this alternate form. So it kind of feels like we are reading some kind of conversation through the point of view of a third person, right? It's kind of like a conversation between this husband and wife, but at the same time, when we, just kind of think about it, it's not really a conversation. It only looks like that because we're reading it, alternately. Because supposedly in this novel, the husband and the wife are aware that their partners are keeping diaries, but they claim that they do not snoop into those diaries, right? And it is also kind of mentioned repeatedly by either the husband and the wife, like how they suspect that their partners are looking into their diaries. So they're trying to do things such that makes it easy for them to know if their partners are looking into the diaries. And it's just kind of funny to kind of read about that, like the this mild paranoia that they have towards each other. But at the same time, you can also detect this feeling that they want each other to look at their, each other's diaries. And there's this kind of, as you read their diaries, right? You can't help but feel that they really want to talk to each other. Like there is something that they really want to communicate with each other. But somehow the communication just does not happen. And so what we're seeing is that both the husband and the wife, they're pouring their hearts out into the diaries, things that they could have said directly to each other, and then but they don't. They just put it inside the diary. And so we readers, we're reading as if they're conversing with each other, but they're not. So there's no communication going on, not one that is, that is healthier, as it should be. That is, and so we end up with this story. Now, another thing that further complicates this relationship is, remember that they have an adult daughter, and this daughter has a suitor who is like super hot, and the wife kind of has feelings for this suitor, and the husband also talks about in his diary like how the wife possibly has feelings for this suitor, and the husband suspects that maybe the wife wants to get, with this suitor. And the wife also kind of talks about how this suitor is kind of hot, but not in a very sexual way, that is, because she kind of holds back on her language and all that. So it gets kind of layered, like all of these assumptions that they have for each other, the things that they could have said to each other, they put it into the diaries, and it's just kind of amusing to watch, or rather to read in this book. Yeah. So that's kind of like, I would say, the surface level view of the story. Now this book is much, it gets more layered than that, because of that. And I would say that this book explores things such as, obviously marriage, sex, relationship, and how it also kind of ties that to the body, or age, the condition of the body, which is going to be something that is kind of important in this book as well. So yeah, this book was an interesting reading experience. To me, it was a decent read. Like, I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. It is interesting to see how these characters just sort of interact with one another, like how these diary entries just sort of bounce off each other, as far as a coherent single piece of narrative goes. There's something that feels a bit rushed towards the end, which I think kind of dilutes that reading experience a little bit, but I think this is just me, right? Things just get somewhat dramatic towards the end, and I do think that the ending is kind of interesting. It's kind of fun to read somewhat, but there's also this change of pacing, which I find to be kind of jarring. But at the same time, there is also a narrative reason for that change of pace, I would say. So, yeah, it's an interesting novel. I actually have another book by Jun'ichirō Tanizaki as well on my shelf. It's called the Makioka Sisters, which I wanted to read more compared to this one, but I thought this one was short, so I guess I just read this one first. But anyway, yeah, it's an interesting book. Let me know if you read anything else by this author and if you have any recommendation. So, moving on to the third book, I got this book by a Korean author. This is called 7 Years of Darkness. This is by You-Jeong Jeong. And this was originally written in Korean, translated to English by Ji-young Kim. It was published sometime in 2011. Yeah, it was a while ago, more than 10 years ago. So this is a thriller, or one might even say literary thriller, however you would categorize a book. So basically, this book follows a character named, let me see if I can get his name. Okay, so it follows this character named So-won, who is a young man at the beginning of this book. When we are first introduced to him, he is a young man. And what goes on with this character, with So-won, is that for the past 7 years, he has been living under the shadow of the accusation that his father is a murderer. So basically, for the past 7 years, his father has been incarcerated in prison supposedly because of a murder or murders that he committed in the past. As a result of that murder, a girl was dead. So-won's mother, and also, well, obviously his father's wife, was also dead because of that event. And another thing that happened was when the murder happened, right? It also happened around at a dam near a village. So at that time, the dam was open, and then as a result, the village was also flooded, and so a lot of people died. And So-won's father was blamed on this for causing this. So basically, he was accused of killing not just this girl, not just his wife, but also a bunch of people in the village. And because of that, for the past 7 years, So-won has been living in this kind of limbo existence where he doesn't really know what happens at the time, and he doesn't have a way to know like what really happened, until one day someone from his past who was kind of connected with the whole incident gave him kind of like a friend, gave him a draft of his novel in which he recounts his interpretation of the things that happened in that past. So through that, he was able to kind of trace back what exactly happened with his father, like what exactly did his father do around the time when the girl was supposedly killed. So it is thriller in that sense, where we are slowly being given information through mainly through this novel draft that So-won's friend gave him. We're getting information like bit by bit, what happened at that time. So it kind of takes on the structure of story within a story, except that the story within the story is a draft of a novel, which may or may not be reliable. So there is that aspect of the story as well in this book. There's reliability of the story, whether it is true or not, and how it affects the framing story, which is kind of like So-won's attempt to find out what happened. Also, adding on to the emotional complication is at the current time when we are introduced to So-won, his father is about to be executed. So there's also that part which kind of makes things a little bit more complex for him, I would say, psychologically speaking. So yeah, basically that is the mystery. And I actually read one book by You-Jeong Jeong before. It's called The Good Son. I originally gave that one 3 out of 5 stars, but then afterwards I sort of realized that there was something about that book that just didn't really sit well with me, vis-a-vis mental illness. So in my mind, I sort of docked 1 star out of my 3-star rating. It became 2 stars. So I didn't really like that one, The Good Son. But I thought The 7 Years of Darkness is a much better work. The book, I would say, definitely leans more onto the what you could expect from a work that can be called as thriller. There's definitely kind of like attempts to make it more suspenseful. And the focus is definitely on the mystery itself and on the reveal of the mystery and the motivation behind it. So there's definitely that. So I feel like if you enjoy thrillers, you might like this. Then again, I'm not so much of a experienced thriller reader. I'm more of a literary fiction reader, but I could also see aspects of this book that could make someone who enjoyed literary fiction appreciate it, right? Okay, first of all, I think that how this novel just sort of features water constantly in its narrative to be kind of interesting. So the murder that happened in this book happened around a lake that happens to be like a dam. And so there is this constant presence of water that feels kind of oppressive in this book, not just due to the presence of the dam itself, but sometimes some of the characters also dive into the water. And then occasionally there are also other ways in which water is written into the story that makes it feel kind of dark and cold. So I think that really sets the tone for the entire book, so much so that even though some parts of this book, I'm pretty sure takes place during the daytime, it always feels like this, things in this book, they either happen at night or when it's like really gloomy and cloudy outside. Basically, the tone of this book feels very solid and consistent. Yeah. That's the part that that's one of those parts that I find that this book that stands out to me. I think that the decision to kind of reveal the mystery through the use of the draft of a novel, is also kind of interesting because it kind of adds onto this complex layer into the plot on whether things are believable or not. So I feel like if you're interested with that kind of approach in storytelling, I think you might be interested in this one as well. So overall, I thought this was a nice read. It gets kind of plotty towards the end. I would say like the pace, it started out quite slow at the beginning, like maybe around the first half. I think it was kind of slow, mainly to introduce the characters and also introduce the circumstances in which the characters find themselves in. And towards the end, it got even, the pace became more and more quicker as we know more information about what really happened, who's responsible, blah blah blah. It got even more, I would say, dramatic. Now, I can't help but keep on, comparing this book with The Good Son because I like it. I did not like that book, but this book also has another thing that makes it even better than that one, which is its critique on certain social issues. This book definitely critiqued things such as class differences, class struggles. Also critique things related to domestic violence and also a little bit of gender issues is also touched on as well. But I find that I kind of liked how this book just touched on the intersectionality between domestic violence, gender issues, and also class struggles. I would say not to expect those issues to be super deeply explored in this book, but it's there. It's definitely there. In regards to domestic violence, certain scenes can be kind of graphic, so it could be kind of triggering. So just to let you guys know in advance. So that's it, I guess, for 7 Years of Darkness. Let me know if you've read this one as well. And I would say that's all for this catch-up wrap-up. I'm gonna return with other videos soon, and I'll see you again. Take care. Thanks for watching, or thanks for listening, and bye.